All right. Welcome, guys. I am super excited about this thing today. I cannot wait. We have with us Dave, the Laundromat Millionaire. Menz, how you doing, Dave?
Good. How are you, man? Are you sure you're not pumped?
Oh, I'm
Are you
pumped.
sure?
Oh,
Oh,
I
he's
am.
pumped.
I
He's
am
pumped, folks.
pumped.
I'm
More
pumped to
than
be here.
more than
I'm pumped to be
normal,
here.
even. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
Man, and today we're going to be talking about uh, how to find financial freedom through laundromat ownership. And I thought, when I was kind of thinking about doing this webinar, I was going to do it on my own originally, and I was like, you know what? Why don't we bring Dave in here because he's there and he's done it and is has found great success. And not only that, but he literally wrote the book on it because that's kind of what I mean. He's got a book that's coming out pretty soon, and it's kind of what his book is about is his journey towards financial freedom through laundromat ownership. So, man, very, very cool to be able to chat with you today about that. And we've got some stuff to talk about. But also, I want to let you guys know that as we're kind of talking today, if you got questions that come up, during this thing. I'm going to keep my eye on the chat. So feel free to throw any questions you have in the chat there, and we would be glad to chat about that. Man, there's
Absolutely.
a lot of rhyming going on here. Man, cool. All right. Well, real quick, I mean, can you guys do us a favor and just say howdy in the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from? I always like to see where in the world everybody is.
Hmm.
And so if you get a shot, throw in the chat there where you guys are from, and we will get started. So, first of all, I mean, I know not everybody here maybe knows who you are, Dave. So, just to introduce Dave, Laundromat Millionaire Men's, you want to tell us just a little bit about who you are? Riverside. I went to UC Riverside. Way to go. All right. I'm excited Tucker's here. What you want to tell us a little bit
Howdy
about?
from Austin. Said
About
howdy from Austin.
howdy. Oh yes, we're we're all all
Uh,
over.
isn't it awesome?
Yeah.
Every time we do like our YouTube lives and different things like that, isn't it so cool? People are like, I'm from New Zealand and
Yeah.
Africa. And I had a guy, sorry, I'm interrupting you, but I had a
No.
guy today send me a message. He was like, how do I buy a book? I'm in Ghana.
Yeah.
Guyana? Is that a country or I'm not, it's not in the United States. I know that. And I was like, thank you. I mean, that's awesome. He was trying
Yeah.
to, my book's on pre-order. So he was trying to pre-order my book. So I was just like, sorry, you're gonna have to wait. Right now
Wait
it's
till it
only
comes
for,
out. Yeah.
right now it's only domestic,
That's
in the United
right.
States. Anyway, I didn't mean to distract you.
Mike, is that Hawkessen? How do you even do you know is that Delaware? DE Delaware? Is that Delaware?
DE's Delaware. Yep.
Hawkessen?
Hokessen.
Darren. What is it?
It's Hokessen.
Hokessen.
Hokessen. All right. I have never heard of Hokessen, but welcome. And James, I'm glad that you're here. I know that I threw everybody a little curveball because the link wasn't working, but I'm glad you guys have made it here, and hopefully the rest of the people will find their way here also. Yeah.
Definitely.
So, anyways, why don't you give us just a quick background on who you are, and maybe you can do this. Okay. I know who you are and I know a lot about your story and stuff. And, not to kind of be like cliche, but your story is a little bit of like a rags to riches,
Hmm.
type of story, not to, say you were rags before, but I mean,
Oh, I was when I was little.
yeah, you did. I mean, you came up through the ranks, right? And you worked your way there. And I think there's a lot of people who are interested in how to do that. They want to do that
Mhm.
themselves. And so tonight, obviously, I want to focus on, okay, what does it take to find financial freedom through laundromat ownership? And I think it can be a great way to find financial freedom. But why don't you just give us not super detailed, but just an overview background
Mhm.
of who you are and how you got to where you're at now.
Yeah, well, the reason I say the rags to riches stereotypical story is just because I grew up really poor in Flint, Michigan, as like a young kid. When I graduated from high school, I mean, my family was probably lower middle class. So it's not like as an adult I was, living homeless or something like that. There's people that start off in much worse situations than me, but that's my childhood and my upbringing. So that's where I always go back to my what I call my backstory. But yeah, I mean, as a young adult, I had a little bit of success young in life, worked in corporate America, had the white picket fence, nice little single family home, was married, had a kid. ended up getting divorced, filing for bankruptcy, being a single dad. And so I had to start over. I wasn't homeless. I still had a good job at the local telephone company, but I was bankrupt, literally. Filed for bankruptcy when I was probably around 24, 25 years old. And so I took a lot of lessons from that. A lot of things that I did wrong, did pretty stupid, to be honest with you, financially and otherwise. And I took those lessons and said, well, I've encountered this adversity in life. I'm going to take these lessons and learn from them and try to make a better life for myself. And so I really started diving deep into, some people call it self-help or, business books, entrepreneurial books, finance books. And yeah, kind of the stereotypical self-help books. And I just tried to learn from my adversity. And long story short, during that whole time, I'd always dreamed of owning my own business. And when I got married to my current wife a few years later, we were very middle class at best, had a young family and things like that. And I reminded her one day that I always want to own my own business. And I felt like I was kind of a sellout and had, let that run by the wayside. And I was probably 31, 32. And I just had this wild hair. And I was like, I'm not going to I had already been at Cincinnati Bell for probably 15 years. I said, I'm not going to do this for another 25, 30 years and then retire. And so I decided to do something about it. So me and my wife sat down. We had a very sincere heart-to-heart meeting about our finances. We were in a conservative place financially, didn't have much debt. We also didn't have much money. We had a net worth that was probably less than $50,000. A little of that was in retirement, a little of that was in home equity. And that was pretty much all we had to our names. And I said, this isn't going to work. We're not going to sell our house and I'm not going to cash out my retirement. And if I did, it wouldn't be worth much with penalties. And I said, so what are we going to do about it? And she and I sat down and came up with a plan to basically accelerate my earnings potential over the next few years, accelerate hers. She went back and got her master's degree. She was a school teacher. We both increased our incomes and we started to live a little bit below our means. So rather than accelerate our lifestyle and buy that new minivan and that new SUV and a nicer house, we were diligent. So for about 4 or 5 years, we, what I call, kept our hand out of the cookie jar. We practiced delayed gratification.
Is
and we
the
saved.
minivan the cookie jar? I want to be.
It's actually the SUV. It's funny. I've even brought up minivan because me and my wife were anti-minivan as they come. I'd ride a bike before we drive a minivan.
I was just clarifying.
Yeah. No, it was all of the above. I mean, to give you an example, when we made that decision, we were in a very modest home and we decided to stay there for probably longer than was comfortable in a lot of ways. We each drove like $2,000 cars that were paid for. And we had a family of 4 at the time and eventually 5. And once again, not that we were living under a bridge or homeless or anything like that, because we were fine. I mean, our family was taken care of, but we didn't, as we increased our earnings potential or increased our earnings, I should say, we just didn't spend it. We didn't change our lifestyle. We just squirreled it away and saved and saved and saved. Long story short, for about 4 or 5 years of doing that, which is a long time to fast forward my story, we had some seed money. We had, I think, about $35,000 saved up over a 4 or 5 year period of time, which still wasn't a lot of money. And what we did is during that whole 5 year period, I was always looking for businesses for sale, looking at the right opportunity. And I just knew that I wanted to own a business. I didn't care what it was. So I wasn't focused on laundromats. And after that 5 year period of time, when we had that $35,000 saved up, I just totally stumbled on a laundromat for sale on Craigslist of all places. And we bought that laundromat. It was a complete dump. It was losing money. We borrowed some money from the SBA and poured our whole life savings into this place. And the quick version, as you know, Jordan, is over the next 4 or 5 years after we bought that place, we bought a second, eventually a third store. I kept my full-time job for that 5 year period of time. And I worked anywhere from 90 to 100 hours a week between my full-time job, sweat equity in my stores, reinvesting in my stores. We still never took a penny out of our personal income. We kept our lifestyle the same. And as the businesses started to generate revenue and make income for us, we kept our hand out of that cookie jar too. Mm-hmm. And we took a couple laundromats that were really in bad shape and we reinvested in them through sweat equity. And every time the businesses made a couple $1,000s, we were like, what can we do with this couple $1,000s to make this business even better tomorrow than it was yesterday? And as you know, Jordan, that's kind of my life moniker. I want to be a better version of myself in every way tomorrow than I was yesterday. Husband, father, friend, and business owner. And we just took that same strategy and said, we're just going to sacrifice, delay gratification, And long story short is the 5 years before we bought a laundromat and the 5 or 6 years after is about a 10 to 12 year period of time where we lived well below our means. And our friends weren't bullying us, but they were picking on us. And they were like, they knew we had plenty of money, but yet we were driving around this little Honda Accord with 290,000 miles on it with, bald tires. And we had money to do something about it. We just didn't want to put that into our life. As long as the car got me to work that day, it was all I cared about. And 10, 12 years is a long time to intentionally delay gratification. And it really put us in just a phenomenal, rock solid place. And at that time is when I quit my full-time job. And that was when I went full-time into business ownership. And the beauty of that is all that foundation, all that delayed gratification, that sacrifice that me and my wife did and my family, my kids too, over those years. Once I quit my full-time job and could focus only full-time on my business, and I had really built up a substantial business, not necessarily money, but just a substantial revenue stream and margins and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, it went straight to the moon. Honestly, short story is my book's called Laundromat Millionaire, as you mentioned. And 2 or 3 years after that was when I just was filling out a personal financial statement one day and looked up and was like, do you realize we're millionaires? And my wife was like, what? And she was like, I don't feel like a millionaire. I'm like, well, I don't know what a millionaire is supposed to feel like. I don't either, but here we are. And long story short, that 10 to 12 year period of time, we went from a net worth of about $50,000 to over $1 million. And within about 3 or 4 years, we became multimillionaires, which is only about a year ago now. And so, there's a lot of lessons, a lot to dig into. But what I tell people is that's my story. And part of the reason I wrote my book and am doing different things that I'm doing right now is to just try to what I call elevate the industry, to just try to share the things that I've learned. Because one of the things that I've learned about this industry, and as much as I love this industry, is that knowledge and information and networking and things like that aren't as plentiful as they should be. It isn't. And I know that's why you started Laundromat Resource too, Jordan, is for the same thing. You saw those gaps, you saw those holes in the market. And I just decided that I wanted to do something about it. So I still own 4 laundromats to this day. We do a robust pickup and delivery business. We own a couple of our properties that our laundromats are in for real estate investments. And we've built a nice little life for ourselves, all on the backbone of hard work, delayed gratification in the laundromat industry. And I say all the time, I believe this is if not one of the best small businesses in America. And I think I'm living proof as to why, because I started without much. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I'm just willing to work really hard and I'm willing to sacrifice. And my message to the world always has been and always will be, whether you have degrees or don't, you have a pile of money in the bank or you don't, what color you are, male, female, the laundromat industry is just bountiful with opportunities like the ones I took advantage of. Rundown, dumpy laundromats that are not serving their communities properly. And I just see those as just opportunities. And so I just want to share the things that I've learned and the knowledge and the resources and, the lessons of how I've gotten to where I am so that other people can go out and do the same things in their communities. And I believe that if those things happen, then what happens is by default, the industry gets what I call elevated. When people say the word laundromat, there's a negative connotation associated with that. And rightfully so. Our industry has earned that reputation. And I'm pretty passionate about doing something about it because I believe that we have a responsibility and obligation to society, to people like me who have found a certain level of success to give back. And there's more than one way to give back. We give financially and things like that too, but also just sharing those, what you call nuggets all the time, of resources and information and even just connecting people together. I mean, as an example, you look over in the chat, I'm guessing some of these people don't know each other. Maybe none of them do. And like when we do our Q&As on YouTube and things like that, this is a form of networking. I mean, we may not be in person, we may not be in a room together, but you may see that there's somebody from Los Angeles. And next thing you know, he pings you a message and you meet for lunch. And that is a form of networking as much as anything else. This is a form of sharing information and knowledge, just like my book is. So probably went longer than you wanted, but you knew that was going to happen anyway.
Well, I don't know if anybody else was counting, but I counted 3 long story shorts in that narrative there.
Yeah. I should probably just stop saying that.
Yeah,
My wife says I should just say long story long.
yeah, you just need to get that out of your vocabulary.
Yeah, I do.
No, I mean, awesome. Thank you for sharing that, because what I want this to be tonight is, that's your background. That's where you came from. That's that's how you took your path to where you're at now, multimillionaire as a laundromat owner. And so, the people in here and the people who are going to, watch this later, are coming from all kinds of different places too. And maybe their goal is to quit their 9-to-5 the way you did, or maybe their goal is to become a multimillionaire the way that you have, or maybe their goal is to, make enough money so that they can quit their current job and go do something they really want to do for a job that maybe doesn't pay as much, or whatever the case may be. Right. And, the beauty of the laundromat industry and the beauty of financial freedom is that it can give you options to live life how you want to live it. Right. And so I want this to be, to have some very practical, things in it for people to take away from this and say, okay, if I implement this, it's going to set me on that path to financial freedom. So I have a few questions for you that I want to, talk through, and maybe you and I can have a conversation about some of these, but also, just as a reminder for anybody who came late, I got my eye on the chat over there, and, welcome to everybody. Pretty cool to see. I mean, we're coming from, Riverside, California, Riaz, woohoo, Cleveland and Tucker, Tracy, New Jersey. I mean, North Carolina, Miami, Surf City. We got 2 North Carolinas. Well, look at that, man.
You guys got a fellow Ohioan from Cleveland. Hey, Tucker, how are you? I don't call myself a Buckeye. I call myself an Ohioan.
Okay. All right.
I'm a Michigan fan. I'm a Michigan fan.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Texas, Delaware, LA, we're all over the map. Pretty cool.
Yep. Super cool.
And not just, Portland, Oregon. All right, Max. Not just are we all over the map geologically, but where we're at in life is all over the map. So very cool. Thank you guys for introducing yourself. If you see somebody, who lives near you, or somebody who sounds interesting, connect up with them. That's cool. That's part of what we want to do here. And Dave mentioned that. But also I got my eye over there in Sacramento. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, Frank. I got my eye over there. So I'm going to be asking Dave some questions. We're going to be having some conversation about how to achieve financial freedom with laundromats. But if questions come up, I'm watching. So, make sure you get those in there, and we'll work them in. Okay, cool. Well, first of all, I want to say, I know your book is coming out, and, it's coming out in December. You can pre-order now. I'll drop a link in a little bit here in case anybody's interested and wants to go check it out. Pre-order it, which I highly recommend. And the reason I can say that is because you sent me an early copy, which I have here on my Remarkable 2, and have highlighted and everything. But I've read it, right? And one of the cool things, well, there's a lot of cool things about it. You skipped a whole lot of years in there when you were giving your background now, and that's all in there. And there's a lot of very practical, tips in there too, and we'll talk about some of those. But for me, and I've said this to you lots of times, way before this book was ever finished, is one of the things I love about you is that the way that you think, right? Your mindset about stuff. And I think that's a big part of why you and I click on a lot of levels, because we have similar mindsets on a lot of things. And, but I love the way that you think. And in your book, one of my favorite things about the book is that at the end of every chapter, there's a section called Own the Grit Within. And it's just some bullet point takeaway points from each chapter. And I thought it'd be cool to just talk about, there's 3 bullet points at the end of chapter 1. And I thought it'd be cool to just kind of talk about these Own the Grit Within, bullet points. We're international, man.
Awesome.
Canada. Look at that.
Mike. I love Mike. He's everywhere I go. And I mean that in a good way, not like he's stalking me kind of way.
Is he stalking you? Is he?
Nah, he's a fantastic guy. I haven't met him in person, but he's everywhere. He's always liking things you and I post and commenting. And so, Mike, welcome. I'm glad to see you here.
Mike's awesome.
Awesome.
All right. So here's the first bullet point, and I'm not going to give away your whole book. Don't worry. But just as maybe to whet the appetite a little bit, the own the grit within. Here's the first one, and I love this. And maybe you can expound a little bit about this and put it in the context of, hey, somebody who, maybe is just getting out of college, or maybe somebody who's been working a 9 to 5 that they really don't want, and they want to try to get out of it, or, whatever the case may be, but somebody who's looking for financial freedom. The first bullet point says this in Own the Grit Within: stay focused. Your start does not, all caps, determine how you will finish. Mm-hmm. And I love that, but why don't you expound a little bit about that, and what do you mean by that?
Well, from a big picture, I've always just looked at it through the lens of, I've always believed, until recently, I've always believed I had a ceiling. It's a psychological thing. I don't know if it's what they taught us in school, my parents, I don't know what it is, but I grew up really poor. So I always believed that my ceiling for, let's call it earning potential, was middle class. Like when you're in poverty, like you're not focused on six figures or multiple six figures or becoming a millionaire. Like that's basically like being Bill Gates. You're just like, if you can escape poverty and be middle class and have a halfway decent, reliable vehicle and a, nice place to sleep at night, whether it's rented or you own it, I mean, that's success to most people. And so one of the things that I have learned over the years that I didn't always know was that, we can go, especially with the power of the internet. And this is a perfect example of it, us just networking here tonight. Information is more available to us than ever before. Networking relationships are more easier to invest in, which does require investment, than ever before. And because of the powers of those things and the way the world is connected today, there's really no reason for us as human beings to not outshoot what may be our psychological ceiling. And I've now done this 4 or 5 times in my life. There was a time where I was promoted from a job that made $40,000 a year to $65,000 a year. And I looked at my wife and I said, I never thought I'd make $65,000 in my life. And I remember that like it was yesterday, because when I said it, I meant it. Like I didn't go to college. So I didn't think I would ever earn $65,000 a year. This is 20 years ago, but that was a pretty middle-class life, at least in Cincinnati. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to talk to what I call the 10-year-old Dave Menz. And it doesn't matter if you're a kid or if you're 60 years old, it doesn't matter. You are where you are. Don't worry about where you've been. That's not relevant. Start where you are. And by the way, don't worry about where I was or Jordan is or everybody else in this chat, because it's really not relevant, other than maybe you can learn from me. But start where you are and don't look back, look forward and say, okay, if I'm 40, then hopefully I have 30, 40, 50 years of life left in me. What can I accomplish in those years? How can I accelerate that? Well, a lot of those things are based in the things I talked about a minute ago: delayed gratification, building things faster, accelerating, leveraging not only money, meaning borrowing money, but compounding money, leveraging relationships. All those things factor into how quickly we can accelerate our success and growth. And you'd be surprised when it really starts to catch fire. As I mentioned earlier, you'd be surprised what kind of traction 2 or 3 years of doing things that most people won't do will get you to a level that most people will never see. Mm-hmm. And so that's really what that was all about, was just forget the past. Don't worry about it. Don't resent it. You know what? If I grew up with a fantastic situation and my parents gave me, or my grandma left me money or whatever, it doesn't have anything to do with you. And if I grew up in poverty and you were given those things, that doesn't have anything to do with me. So you can learn from people that have been in similar situations. So if you grew up similar to me, then guess what? You're going to probably have to do similar things to me. You're probably going to have to make similar sacrifices, and probably going to have to delay gratification and take jobs you don't want to take, which I did to increase my earnings, to accelerate that process. So that's really what that nugget's all about.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that, we'll actually expound on that a little bit more in the next bullet point. But the other part of that I really like is you say stay focused, right? And I think that we get, that shiny object syndrome so often. It's so tempting, right? And it's so easy to get distracted. It happens to me all the time. And I can't remember if it's like, somebody probably knows. If you know, let me know. I think it's like C.S. Lewis or somebody said, you know, God, man, I'm going to butcher it too. So you probably won't guess who it is. But, basically the essence is like, hey, success is basically taking a long walk in the same direction, right? And that's probably not really the quote, but the point being like, hey, when you start down a path and you start making some progress and maybe you hit some adversity, which we'll talk about in a second, or maybe you just get bored, or maybe something shiny comes up over here and you veer off that path and you go a different direction and you walk down that path for a little bit and then you veer off again and you veer off again. You don't give yourself enough time to make progress. You don't give yourself enough time to find success, right? And there's this, in my view, and maybe you tell me what you think about this. In my view of things, there's this balance, right? To some extent, we do need to go down different paths, to find out what the direction for us is, right? I started off in physics, and then I went to youth ministry, and then I went to laundromat ownership, and then I went to real estate, and now I'm doing podcast. I mean, I've gone all over the place too, right? But when you give yourself time doing something and you're focused and you stay consistent, that's when you give yourself a chance at success at something, whatever it is, whether it's laundromat ownership or your job or whatever it is, right? So I love that stay focusing, because that's a message that I need to hear a lot. I'm very susceptible to any kind of distraction or shiny object or new thing, right? And so staying focused is huge for me. And in fact, it's so big that every single morning I have on my Remarkable too. I have a template that I loaded up on there where I go through and I write down my 3 goals for the quarter, and I write them down every day, and I write down why I want to do them and why I want to accomplish them and what my next most important step is to take to achieve that goal. And I do that every single morning so that I can stay focused, because I know that if I don't do that and if I don't have a game plan for the day and how I'm going to make some progress, I'm not going to make any progress because it's just too hard for me to stay focused.
Excuse me. Well, what I'll tell you, Jordan, is, I think this also falls under the category of we all have different strengths and weaknesses, right? For you, that may be a weakness. For me, that may be a strength. I'm kind of I always use the word obsessed because it's the best word I know to describe me. But whenever I do something, I'm all in. I'm 150 miles an hour. But I know that about me. I know that's my nature. And so I can't chase everything because I'll kill myself. Like I got to focus. I got to focus on a couple things. And it doesn't have to just be one, but it can't be 8. Like somewhere in between that. For me, it's usually 2 or 3. But you would be surprised when you obsess over something with extreme focus for even a short period of time. You mentioned a couple of years, but what about 6 months? I have coaching clients and I'll even put myself in this category. Before I bought my first laundromat, I went through about a 3.5 month phase of due diligence because I didn't know anything about this business. And I obsessed and I bought everything I could find online and every book and every resource. And this is 13 years ago. So there wasn't a whole lot out there back then, not as much as there is now. And there wasn't podcasts and stuff like that. But I read everything I could find and I interviewed every equipment distributor in Cincinnati and found a great one and invested heavily in that relationship. And I spent so much time with Steve Millman, my mentor, that my wife and kids started to refer to him as my boyfriend. And honestly, I just kind of laughed because I probably talked to him as much as I talked to my wife for a while. But once again, I was all in. And so, you have to find something that what I call feeds you energy, something that's fulfilling to you. And if you're chasing things that aren't feeding you energy and aren't fulfilling to you, then you're wasting that energy. In my opinion, you're wasting your life. We only have so many hours on this earth and so many days and so many years and all that stuff. But the reality is just spend your time doing something that you get fulfillment out of. And by the way, there's a difference in fun and in joy and fulfillment. Those are different things. And I don't think you want to take this down that rabbit hole, but the point is, just because something isn't fun to you doesn't mean it isn't fulfilling. Because there was a time where pretty much everything I was doing was not fun. It was hard. Like I had a newborn baby at home. I had a 2-year-old at home and a 10-year-old daughter. And I was working 90 to 100 hours a week for 4 to 5 years. Now, it was fulfilling because I knew where I was going and what I was accomplishing, and I was making progress. But there was nothing fun about that because I'm a family man and I wanted to be with my family and I wanted to be with my kids. But one of the things that growing up in poverty taught me was no one was going to come and give me anything. I had to go get it, like the old hunter-gatherer type of mentality. I had to go out and kill that puppy and bring it home, or we weren't eating dinner. That was all there was to it. And I wasn't happy with the status quo. I wasn't happy with working at a job that I didn't like, commuting an hour every way to work, coming home from work in a bad mood and miserable because I had a terrible boss who treated me terribly. That was not a life that I wanted for me or for my family, even though the financial aspect of it was perfectly acceptable. There was nothing wrong with being middle class. That wasn't the problem. So for me, it wasn't the money. And that's the funny thing about my book is that, the title of the book's Laundromat Millionaire, but I've never been very motivated by money. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that it's not important because it is, but money has never been enough of a driving force for me. It's just what my mentor calls a way to keep score. Am I bringing value to the world? Am I serving people? Am I elevating myself? Am I a better version of myself this year than I was last year? Am I serving my community and my family in better ways? Those are ways of really moving the needle in your life. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just how my brain, kind of how I wrap my brain around what I do and kind of why I did what I did. Because I had a lot of people that I really respected during that window that were questioning me. I mean, here I was, I had a good job. I had good benefits and a nice house and a family I loved. And they kind of were like, they almost insinuated in some ways that I was being selfish or greedy or money hungry by wanting more from my family. But what they never understood is it wasn't about making more money. It was about finding a more fulfilling life for me and my family. And those are the things we tell our kids now as they're growing up. My daughter's married and out of the house and everything. And we've always told our kids, you can't tell your kids to go do things that you don't do yourself. Kids are smart and they see a lot better than they hear. So if raising kids is important to you, if having a fulfilling life and a fulfilling household is important to you, then maybe focus is where you need to be and focus on fulfillment, not necessarily enjoyment.
Yeah, that's huge. I love that. And kind of going back to, you were talking about, being obsessed, and it reminds me of the Grant Cardone book, Be Obsessed or Be Average. And, I think that, when you look at successful people, they're the kind of people that other people say, man, they're just obsessed, with whatever. And there's this weird, I've found, maybe tell me if you find this too. There's this point in time. I'm not exactly sure when it is, where that's like a negative thing and people think they make fun of you, like your friends and stuff. And then at some point you cross some kind of invisible threshold and you've reached some level of success, and that obsession, it turns out to be the thing that got you there. One of the big things that got you there. And I think Grant Cardone kind of got a lot of flack for that book. But I read that book and I was like, you know what? This is like really true. This is not like a popular thing, but this is like really true. So if you're somebody who has like bigger ambitions, if you're somebody who wants to build a bigger business, who wants to serve more people, and that's not everybody, right? And there's nothing wrong with being average either. But if you're somebody who's ambitious, that obsession has to be there. And if it's not there, go find where your obsession is, because that's where you're going to find the most success.
Well, let me throw another thing out there. Is I think when we're using a lot of the words you just used, a lot of people associate those things with finances. Mm-hmm. And once again, I experienced this. I experienced people that I love and respect who love and respect me. Mm-hmm. And they just didn't know. They didn't understand me. They didn't understand what made me tick. I have no desire to just punch the clock, work a job, have enough money, and die someday. Like that's not enough. I don't believe that's why God put me here, quite frankly. And that's not enough for me. But that has nothing to do with me needing more money. I never did anything that I did there to become a millionaire or a multimillionaire or to write a book. That was not my motivation. Now I knew, because I've studied business since I was a little kid, I knew that if I did those things, I would be very fulfilled. And yes, I would find financial freedom, because as my mentor told me, it's a great way of keeping score. Well, if you're obsessed with serving others, which is why I believe we're all here, and finding holes in society and gaps in the community and serving those, meeting those needs, just in the way that a Microsoft changes the world. Well, you may not change the world for millions and millions of people, but you may just change the world for a few hundred people in your local community by taking the local laundromat and turning it into a community asset versus a community eyesore. Mm-hmm. Well, that's way more fulfilling to me than money. But because I've studied business my whole life, because I'm a little what I call an entrepreneurial nerd, I knew that the result of that would also be financial freedom. So in my opinion, I mean, I'm sure there's people that have made a lot of money by focusing on money. I'm sure it happens all the time. But those are also a lot of times the people that cut corners and they use a relationship with somebody to get ahead, and then they stick their thumb on their, head, and all these and they do all these, slime bally things in life, unethical, immoral things to make money. The beauty of where I am in life, and where you can be too, by the way, is that you can have your cake and eat it too. Mm-hmm. All you got to do is focus on serving others. And then you don't have to choose. You don't have to choose whether you're going to sacrifice that relationship or that friendship in exchange for money. Because if you serve people well, the money will follow. It always does. Now, I can't tell you if it'll be year 1 or year 6. So you can't be focused on money, and it can't be important to you. Doesn't mean it doesn't matter. Once again, I'm not a money hater. Money's fun. I like having it. It's, we can do a lot of cool things and make a lot of cool memories and help a lot of people. It's really just about that foundational component. And look, if you want to take the things that I'm teaching and you want to say, you know what he says makes a lot of sense, but that's just not as important to me as it is to him, that's okay. Like, you're a person. I'm not claiming to be some saint, because I'm far from it. What I'm saying is the principles in business. That's what I want everybody to hear in my message. The principles in business work. So whether that is fulfilling to you and important to you or not is, quite frankly, irrelevant. What's relevant is that they are actionable and that they work. And so do those things. Roughly 70% of the laundromats in this country, bringing it back to laundromats, are in a terrible state of disrepair. Mm-hmm. That just screams opportunity for me everywhere. And I know there's some markets where there's less opportunity and there's some where there's more, but I don't buy for 1 second that there's markets where there's no opportunity. You'll never convince this guy who just thinks too big that that's the case. You're just not looking in the right place, or maybe you're looking in the right place and you just don't have the right education. Maybe you don't have the right mentors. Maybe you need a better coach. Maybe you need to read a different book, watch Jordan's podcast. I don't know where the gap is, but the opportunities are everywhere.
Yeah, well, that leads right into bullet point number 3, which we'll skip to and come back to it because it's a big one too. But bullet point number 3 says, refuse to believe any garbage about not having options. You have them or you make them. I loved that. And what does that mean? Okay, so again, for the person who's looking for an escape from a 9-to-5, or who's looking for financial freedom, or who, just wants to divorce their time from their earning potential, right? Which laundromats can do with that kind of flex time that they provide. It's not a one-to-one relationship with how much money you make versus how much time you put in, right? Or any business really. So, what do you mean? You have options or you make it. Can you give us, some examples of that or some background behind that?
Yeah, the reason that I put that bullet point in there is because a lot of those I'm talking to myself. In fact, I'd say probably all of them. Maybe I'm talking to myself. When you grow up in poverty, guess what? People tell you what you're capable of and what you're not. They tell you what your ceiling is and what you're not capable of. And I had people my whole life who loved me, who were very well intentioned, who told me that I was never going to amount to anything. Now, they didn't say it like that. They didn't say it in a hateful, negative way, but that's basically what they told me. And the reason why is because I wasn't good at school. That was it. If you can't memorize and take a test and get an A or a B and get into college and graduate with a little piece of paper, then you're not going to be successful. And that's what I say by garbage. Look, I'm not a, a degree hater or anything like that. Education is everywhere. But the fact of the matter is opportunity is all around us. It's just a matter of whether you take advantage of it or not. And it's a mindset. It's a mindset. I had people tell me when I was young that I would never do anything because I was born into a poor family. And if you're born into poverty, you can't escape poverty. And quite frankly, some of those people were my family because they were in poverty. And the reason they told me that was an indication of their problem, not my problem. And I didn't totally understand the psychology back then, but I've always been stubborn enough to just be like, you know what? You tell me, because I was raised in poverty or even middle class, for example, that I can't be anything other than that. But all I know is when I look around the world, I see people that did escape poverty. And I see people who do have disabilities that did great things. And I see people that didn't go to college that accomplished great things like Richard Branson and Bill Gates. So I don't believe you. It's really that simple. It's not any more complicated than that. And the opportunities are everywhere. But once again, if you want to buy the victim mentality of, I'm disabled and I lost my leg or I lost my sister to cancer, or whatever these things are, I mean, we decide all those things. And so a big part of my message is, if I can, you can. And what I mean by that is not that I started in the worst place possible in human history, because I didn't, but I started in behind the eight ball compared to a lot of people. And I did a few things right. And by the way, I went right again behind the eight ball when I filed for bankruptcy and divorced and all these things. And I dug myself out again. So I'm living proof that it can happen. And if there's anything that anyone gets out of my messages in my book and webinars like this and things like that, it's just that, no one can determine to you what your limitations and your ceiling are other than you. If you live in I'll give you another example. If you live in a rural community where you live in a town of 50 people and you say, well, there's not a laundromat in this town, or there's not even maybe a business in this town, and I can't find a good job. I live in a town of 50 people and I'm 3 hours from the nearest city. Move. like move. I mean, I know that's home, but move. And my family is an example of that. I personally didn't do that, but my dad, once again, I grew up in extreme poverty. And my dad, my parents were married and had my older brother their senior year of high school and had me 2 years later. So when they were like 19 and a half, 20, they had two babies at home, no education, and both of them barely graduated high school. But you know what they did? My dad joined the Air Force and he got some training and he sacrificed and he spent time away from his family. And after that training for 4 years, he dove back into what they call civilian life. And he took all those skills and he accelerated his education, and he took some community classes that the Army or the military paid for. And you know what he did? He moved our family from Flint, Michigan to Cincinnati, Ohio. And he did that because since, Flint, Michigan was primarily a, GM town. And during the time that he made the decision to do that, the place was declining. It was not in its booming years. It was getting worse and worse. They were shutting down factories. There weren't jobs. The economy was dying, if not stagnant. And my dad wasn't the smartest guy in the world, but he opened his eyes and was like, I want more for my family in this. And the funny thing is, my entire family lived in Flint, Michigan, on both sides of my family. And my mom's side is a pretty big family. And so it wasn't easy for my parents to make that decision, but I'm using my dad as an example once again, because my dad is a part of what dug our family out of poverty. So those are just a few examples for people, and you're maybe in a different situation or maybe identical situation, but that's just an example of we can sit around and say we can't do anything about it. Or you can say, I can do something about it. Maybe you don't want to, maybe you don't want to move your family. That's fine too. But don't say the opportunity isn't there. The opportunity's there. You're just not willing to do what it takes to go chase it down. And as a free thinking person in the United States of America, at least, and a lot of countries, I mean, the reality is that's your choice. But don't tell me there's no opportunity, because that's, once again, just garbage.
Yeah. And I think, kind of going back and tying it into what you were talking about before, and the last bullet point is, a lot of times when people say there's no opportunity, they're talking about that they don't have enough money, and there's this mentality, that it takes money to make money. And I, speaking of garbage, like, I think that is garbage, because there's plenty of people who have money who can't make money with that money.
That's very true.
Who have money and who have lost that money and now don't have money. And there's plenty of people like yourself who started out with no money and, and now have money. And so, but I do think that there's this, reality that I think people need to come to grips with. Okay. Now I do a ton of coaching calls too. I know you have done that in the past, and, and I do these webinars every week, and I'm talking with people all the time. Right. And there are people who are looking for financial freedom through laundromat ownership because it can be a lucrative business.
Mm-hmm.
However, the idea that you're going to come with no money and then all of a sudden be a laundromat millionaire yourself automatically is not going to happen, right? So if you want to make money, you either need to start out with a lot of money and put that money to work in smart ways and make money with that money, or you're going to need to put some time, effort, energy, sacrifice, and build that sweat equity into making the money, right? And so when people say there's no opportunities, usually when they're saying that, they mean they don't have enough money to make it happen. But I want to just refer back to your background story that you gave us here a little bit, and where you didn't have any money. So what did you do? You and your wife both decided we're going to try to put some money away. So you both got some more education. You both sacrificed and saved and created a small, $35,000 is not a small amount of money. It's a lot of money, but relatively speaking, a small amount of money that you put together to do something with it, right? But it wasn't easy. And then even after you did that for 4 or 5 years, saving up that money, you bought a dumpy laundromat that was losing money. Like the work was just starting at that point, right? And it took a lot of work and effort and, and time. And you said you were working 90, 100-hour weeks, and in order to build that up, right? So I just want to, what I love about your story and about your book and about this bullet point that says refuse to believe the garbage about not having options. I want to make it clear to people that you always have options. They may not be options that you like, right? And if you weren't obsessed with building your own business, probably would not be a good option to be working 90 or 100 hours a week for something that you really didn't want to do. And so that's the reality of what, people are facing. If you have money, put it to work in smart ways. And that's easier said than done a lot of times. If you don't have money, be prepared to go create some value, right? That's what you have to do to find that financial freedom.
Well, and I'll add this too, Jordan. 5 years doesn't sound like long when you and I sit here and talk about it. Like, just say 5 years,
right?
Doesn't sound that long.
Not a long time,
right?
Yeah.
But let me tell you something. When you're living it every day, 90 to 100 hours a week, haven't seen my kids in, maybe twice in 6 months, which I'm not exaggerating at times. You talk about sacrifice. Like, I take that very personally. And quite frankly, I don't recommend that everyone do the things that I did, because I don't regret it now, but man, what if it didn't work? There's a lot to unpack in this situation. But what I always tell people is, once again, $35,000 is a lot of money, right? It is. But let's break that down into a year. We were only saving about $6,000 a year, which is roughly $500 a month. That's really not that much money. Maybe you can only save half of that. Okay, well, you do that for 10 years, you have 35. Or maybe you do it for 5 years, but you have half the money. Well, there's, the old saying, there's more than one way to skin a cat, which my wife hates that saying, but that old saying is so true in so many ways. And the point is, there's a million different ways to do it. But all I know is that I didn't see other options for myself. I knew I had to take a job take on a business that was greatly discounted, that was in a terrible state of disrepair. And I knew I had to do some pretty extreme things, and I knew I would take some heat. So, once again, wherever you are, wherever you're starting, that's your starting point. Whatever age you are, that's the age you are. You can't go backwards anyway, so it doesn't matter. Don't focus on it. Try to figure out where you are right now and try to figure out the best path forward. Let me tell you something. During those 5 years that I was saving $6,000 a year, You know what I was doing while I was saving that money? I was working and I was reading and reading and reading and reading and watching videos. And, you know, YouTube wasn't, it might have been around, but I didn't watch it much. Podcasts weren't around, things like that. But all the resources, webinars and things like this that we have nowadays, they weren't around and certainly weren't predominant 12, 13 years ago. So during that 5 years that I was saving money, I wasn't just saving money and going, well, until I get some money, I can't do anything. I was like, you know what? When I have enough money and I find the right opportunity, I need to make sure that I have the education too, because otherwise I could have just worked for 5 years, saved up $35,000, put it into a terrible investment and been broke and been like, what did I do? And that actually happens, right? People do that all the time because they think that the only thing that matters is having the $35,000. But what's more important than that is the education.
I mean, that's what I did.
Yep.
Not on purpose, but I mean,
it's common, right? I mean, it's common.
Money and I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't.
Right. I mean, we think the money is the problem and we think money is the solution.
Yeah.
And money's just a tool. That's all it is, guys. It's just a tool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it reminds me, I like that you just said that because it reminds me. So like when I was a pastor, I used to do a lot of like counseling and stuff. And I'd talk to people who were like, I want a spouse who's going to be, this amazing, awesome person. And, I would always kind of try to bring it back to like, okay, well, what are you doing now to make sure that that really awesome person, when you do meet them, is going to want to marry you? Like, right. And it's the same with the business, right? If you're not at a point where you can, pull the trigger on, on buying a business or starting a business or whatever, well, you got to be working to become the kind of person that when that opportunity comes, when that option comes your way, you're the kind of person who's going to be able to take advantage of it and make the most out of it. So I love that.
Well, let me use my situation again real quick. And I know we're running out of time, but the fact of the matter is I could have very easily just said, you know what? I don't have the money and I don't see an opportunity. And so I'm just going to sit around and wait for money to fall from the sky or whatever. I'm just going to buy my new car because I'm tired of waiting anyways, or I'm going to do something about it. And all I knew is that the opportunities were out there, but I hadn't found the right one for me. And I didn't know it would be laundromats. I had no idea. I just knew that whenever it happened, if it happened tomorrow, I wanted to be ready, or at least as ready as I could be. Now, did I know that was going to take 5 years? No, I didn't. When we got started, we didn't know how long it would take. I was just like, all I know is $500 a month is all we could save. And so that's what we're going to save. And I'm going to work on my education because I don't have anything else to do. Like there isn't an opportunity. And by the way, I was constantly looking for opportunities in those 5 years. I bet I looked at 150, 200 businesses for sale in every industry you can imagine. Some very short term and some took a little bit longer with due diligence. And every single time I just came to the conclusion that there was red flags and this wasn't the right fit for me for whatever reason, a lot of times multiple reasons. And so I rebooted, went back to my education. And sometimes I spent $500, $1,000 trying to figure out if that was the right market or the right industry for me, the right opportunity. And it just so happened that 5 years was the case. And the other thing I'll add, Jordan, is that it didn't matter to me if it took 10 years. Like I was resolute. I was going to do this. And if it took 10 years and it took me saving $70,000, that's what I was going to do because it was that important to me. This was about my life. This wasn't just about a Porsche or a Corvette or a 3-bedroom house or whatever,
Minivan, right?
Or a minivan. Yeah, that's right.
Well, I mean, and that reminds me of Napoleon Hill's, when he talks about success, he talks about you got to have definiteness of purpose, right? You're resolute. That's definiteness of purpose right there.
That's right.
Once you have that, there's no stopping you, right? Okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and there may be some people listening to this now or later or whatever that are like, well, I don't know if I'm that resolute about owning a laundromat. That's not the point, guys. That's not the point. This isn't about the product. The laundromat's just a product. It's about your life. What are you going to do with your life? Because that whole 5-year period of time, I had no idea I was going to buy a laundromat. Never even considered it, which is kind of funny to me now because it was so daggone obvious. But I never even considered one until I just stumbled upon it on Craigslist. So anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So real quick, I am going to ask you, Dave, to give us homework in a second. I want to talk about the second bullet point just briefly because it's important. But while we're doing that, I want you to be thinking, what what's one or two things that we should log off of this webinar and go do? Don't answer this yet, but go do uh, to get us on the path. What should we be doing to get us going? Is there an action we need to take? Is there, a mindset we need to shift? One or two things maybe that will get us pointed in the right direction and, kind of turn us there and give us a little push with some homework to go do, because I'm all about the action, man. These webinars, this is awesome. Like I could talk about this with you all day and all night long, right? I love this, but this will never help you accomplish your goals. The only thing that's going to help you accomplish your goals is when you go and put this into practice and take action. So give us some homework, not yet, but be thinking about that. I really just very briefly want to read over point 2 because I love this one too. And I think this is, I think this probably kills more dreams than almost anything else out there. And you say this in Own the Grit Within, bullet point 2, which we had already skipped over. Embrace adversity, even though it can be tough. It's a good teacher, assuming you don't give up and quit. Man, I love that because we've been talking about adversity all throughout this. And so we don't need to hit it too hard. And, and the whole giving up and quit thing, we kind of brought up too with going different paths and, hitting roadblocks and stuff. But I love that you said that because I see all the time in my own life in certain aspects, but also with a ton of other people that I coach when I was a pastor, when I was pastoring, them all, it happens all the time, right? We give up too soon because things get hard, because we have to go to the laundromat in the morning, then go to our 9 to 5, and then go to the laundromat at night before we go home and see our kids. And when we get home, our kids are either going to bed or they're already in bed, or you leave before they wake up. It's hard. Or the homeless people, again, have pooped in the back of your laundromat, which has happened multiple times. Or, they graffitied it again, or whatever, whatever the case may be. Like, it can be hard, right? And we quit. And even before you get that laundromat, right? Working, saving, everything it takes to get in there can be difficult. So I love that. Embrace adversity, even though it can be tough. It's a good teacher, assuming you don't give up and quit. Anything you want to say about that before you give us some homework?
No, I think that's pretty self-explanatory, to be honest with you. But the reason that I put that in the book and out there is because that is one of my secret sauces. It's really that simple. Like I said a minute ago, I was resolute. I was obsessed. Quitting wasn't an option for me,
if you will.
Stubborn. Absolutely. I'm one of the most stubborn people there is. And, maybe you have to channel that in a different way. Maybe you're not stubborn. Maybe business ownership isn't that important to you, but maybe providing a better life for your family is that important, or being able to take care of your elderly parents who are broke. Whatever your motivations are, my motivations were different than your motivations. Maybe they're the same, but that's really the heart of the message, if that makes sense. That's really all.
Yeah. And I feel like, just real quick, that stubbornness is another one of those things where there's a line in there somewhere where it's a negative trait.
No doubt.
Until it's a positive trait.
It's all about what you channel it for.
Yeah.
Trust me, I got myself in a lot of trouble when I was younger because I was stubborn and I didn't channel it for good. I was going to do what I was going to do. Nobody was going to tell me what to do. I was the 5-year-old saying, you can't tell me what to do. And I got grounded, and you still couldn't tell me what to do. Well, you're grounded, so go to your room. As I got older and matured a little bit, and quite frankly, as life taught me that there's probably always going to be people that get to tell me what to do. And I need to get over that. That was a growing process for me. So yeah, there's no doubt you can channel. I would argue most attributes in life that you can channel them for good or you can channel them for bad. Let's be honest. There's some really dumb criminals out there, right? But there's also some criminals that are really, really, really smart too.
Yeah.
What if they channel that for good? Like, what kind of impact could they have in the world other than robbing banks and not getting caught or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. And, and I think that too, I liked you kind of were alluding to that why behind doing what you're doing. Your why was really like you want to be a business owner and you want to serve other people, right? That was your big why. But we all have different whys, and you kind of threw out a couple of different ones. And you know, in a sense, we're all stubborn about something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you're stubborn about, hey, I want a better life for my family, or you're stubborn about, I will do whatever it takes to take care of my aging parents, or I will do whatever it takes to move out of Cincinnati, Ohio and go somewhere that's actually nice, that, people like, and, won't make fun
Snowbird.
of me for living there. I don't know.
Snowbird.
I'm just kidding. But whatever it is, but like finding that why genuinely, that's a big
Mm-hmm.
deal. And it does help you overcome those obstacles, because the obstacles don't feel so big when your why of what you're doing is much bigger than those obstacles, right?
I'll just say for me, I didn't even think about them. I didn't even think about the only thing I thought is how to overcome them. That was it. As soon as they came up, quitting wasn't an option. Running wasn't an option. I always said, I'm not the brightest guy in the world, but I'll run into that brick wall 600 times, because 601, that wall's going down. Like, I'm not going to stop. I'm just not going to stop. And it was about financial freedom. It wasn't about money. Sometimes those are correlated. Sometimes they're not correlated. For me, it was being able to provide for my family, being able to live a fulfilling life and be able to live it on my terms. And I told you about all the sacrifices I made, but I mean, you can probably imagine I have a pretty great lifestyle now. I have a team of 40 employees that run all my businesses for me, and I don't work unless I want to. And I'm 45. I've been doing that for 3 or 4 years now. So if you do things the right way, the results will come, but nobody's going to promise you they're going to come in year 3 or 5. It might be year 10, and you have to still be okay with that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to throw out something real quick that is completely original and not read from behind you at all. But in order to become the 1%, you must do what the other 99% are not willing to do, right? You got to do what they're not willing to do in order to become the 1% or successful, financially free, or whatever the case may be, right?
I've told you this a million times, Jordan, but I don't do coaching much anymore. But when I did a lot of one-on-one coaching and stuff, I can't tell you how many times people came to me and they were like, I'm in a similar situation to you, or maybe even a little bit better situation, and I want to do what you did, and I want to have what you have. And we'd have an hour or 2 hour conversation about what that's going to look like. And, I wasn't there to blow smoke. I was there to tell them the truth. There's way too much Hollywood entrepreneurship being sold out in the world. I was selling the truth. I always say I want to tell people what they need to hear versus what they want to hear. And they would get really irritated. And I would always tell them, I mean, it's very clear to me, you want what I have, but you don't want to do what I did to get it. Well, if you're in a better place than me starting out, you may not have to do what I did. And good for you. If you don't have to do what I did, don't. Like, it was really hard, and it did tax my family and all the things you can imagine. But the flip side's also true. You may be in a worse situation than me. And so you may need to make more sacrifices, longer period of time. And I don't know what those look like. They're different for all of us.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want you to send us out with some homework here in a second, but I just want to say, first of all, thank you for coming on and just sharing all of that. And you didn't ask me to do this, and I know we have 2 more things to talk about actually, and you didn't ask me to do this, but I'm going to just, for anybody who's interested, Dave's book is coming out in December. I just threw the link for the pre-order form right here in the chat. So, if you're interested in the book, I've read it. It is really good. It's really cool to hear his story about how, he just it was tip of the iceberg today about what he had to sacrifice, what he had to do to get to where he is. And also it's tip of the iceberg on, some of this wisdom that you're dropping today. I mean, there's just so much really good stuff in there. Every chapter has an Own the Grit Within that is awesome. And so anyways, I don't want to I'm not trying to sell you on anything, but if somebody's interested in this book, I highly recommend it. Go pre-order it. You get some bonus perks if you pre-order it, and then it's shipped out before Christmas. So give it out as some gifts too.
In December. And then I'll throw out there too, you mentioned a few bonuses. One of the bonuses, all pre-ordered copies will be autographed. So if that's important to you, that's an extra bonus.
It's important to me. So how about this? Why don't you have another event that I'm taking part in and I'm very excited about too. Why don't you tell us about that and then send us out with some homework?
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it, Jordan. Yeah, to let you guys know, this is only the second time I've mentioned this. I haven't mentioned it publicly other than in another forum like this. But yeah, we're starting our first, what I'm calling our Laundromat Millionaire Conference, where everyone's a VIP, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a entrepreneurship business slash laundromat conference. We will be talking about laundromat specific things, and we will be talking about business specific things that are transferable from industry to industry. It's going to be at the end of February. The rough dates, and we're still finalizing them, are roughly the 22nd to the 24th of February, this coming February in 2022. It's going to be in Miami, Florida. So if you're in Florida and you can just drive down and spend a couple of days with us, that's cool. If you got to fly like me and Jordan, then that's awesome too. We'd love to have you. We're going to have more information coming out later, but we're calling it the Laundromat Millionaire Conference. And it's all just about a lot of the things we talk about. We're going to dig deeper into some of the business mindset type of things. I'm going to be speaking on several occasions. Jordan's going to be there and speaking and be our MC. So you can meet us in person, take pictures with us, get to know us.
Stand for real quick?
Master of Ceremonies. He likes for me to call him the master. When I asked him if he would do it, he told me he would do it as long as I called him master. So Master Jordan will be there. And it's going to be a great time, but it's also going to be a cool opportunity to network, because one of the cool things about me and Jordan's network, which will be a lot of people that are there, of course, is that our networks are pretty strong. These are smart, successful business people or people that are well on their way to being very successful. And if you want to increase your knowledge, your education, you want to expand your network and accelerate all these things, you want to be in a room or rooms with people that are doing what you're doing or have done what you've done. But the reason we say everyone's a VIP event, because this is not exclusive. It's first come, first serve. We're going to probably sell anywhere between 100 and 200 tickets, and then we're going to shut it off. But we're going to have speakers from outside the industry, commercial property experts, networking experts, an executive from Microsoft will be there talking to us about business. So it's going to be a pretty high level thing, something like the industry's never seen. But then we're going to have entertainment in the evening. The food's going to be included. It's going to be a really cool event, and I would love for you guys to join us. And we're going to release a lot more information in the next couple of weeks about it. But I just wanted to kind of throw it out there since Jordan gave me the chance. It's kind of a like save the date kind of thing. So I'd love to see some of you guys or all of you guys there.
I don't know if you know this. We might have to just kind of make something happen with this if those dates end up sticking. But that is my 40th birthday falls within those dates that you just mentioned. So I'm just saying there may
Which day is it? Which day is it? The 24th. You got to come to Miami, guys.
It's a party.
Sing happy birthday to Jordan, to Master Jordan. Sorry.
40, man. It's getting old.
Forgive me.
All right, man. Give us some homework. Looking forward to that event, by the way. And I hope some of you guys can join us there, and, stay
awesome.
tuned for some links and stuff. You'll see those. But why don't you send us out with some homework?
Yeah. It's tough for me to give homework to a specific person when I don't know your specific story. So these are, big picture stuff. But what I tell people to do is take the situation you're in, set some goals, and then develop a master plan of how you're going to achieve those goals. And then break down that master plan into what I call micro plans, right? And they can be probably not that probably doesn't make sense, but months, weeks, years. And it might be something as simple as Jordan has Laundromat Resource Podcast, and you've already decided that you're either going to or very likely going to be getting into the laundromat business at some point. You're going to buy a laundromat. You don't know when, you don't know where, you don't know how, but you're going to. He's got over 70 episodes of his podcast, and I haven't watched one yet that didn't bring me value. And I probably know quite a bit about the industry compared to most people in the industry. And so if I can learn from those, imagine what you can learn from those. I have a podcast that only has about 20 episodes, but I'd love for you to check it out. It's the Laundromat Millionaire Show. It's on all podcasting platforms. It's on YouTube and things like that. Those are great places to start. I have my book that I think is very valuable. I wrote it in a sense that it's a teaching memoir. So it's not just a story, it's a teaching story. Those are some good places to start. But the reason I bring up those resources is because we're talking about laundromats today. But if you're just looking to be a business owner, entrepreneurship, financial freedom, there's a million different resources out there. One of the things I love about the world today is that their education and the resources are so tremendous. They're everywhere. The flip side of that is be careful who you listen to and what you believe, because the fact of the matter is there's a lot of bad information out there. There's a lot of people that are just trying to sell you a course, or just trying to sell you a book, or trying to get their subscribers on their podcast up. And so look at it, whenever you start to consume content, no matter where it is, try to figure out who the person is and what their heart is. You don't really have to know them as a human being. Just try to figure out what their heart is, what their intentions are. Because there's a lot of good people out there doing a lot of good stuff, a lot of organizations, trade associations, things like that, that are doing good stuff and are good people and trying to produce good things. But there's just as many that are complete and utter garbage, as I like to say. And so you gotta delineate between the two and kind of, discern what that looks like. But those are like very big picture things, because I can't speak to an individual.
Yeah, no, and I love that. I just wanted to show you real quick, actually. First of all, man, I love hey, set some goals and create a master plan on how to get there. Now, I just want to show you real quick. I keep flashing my Remarkable too, because I really love it and I use it every single day. But I just want to show you my first thing that I ever did with Laundromat Resource and what it might be. I drew this. I'm sure you can't see all the different things on there, but that's like the master plan on what I want to do with Laundromat Resource, right? And just, that is what I am looking at all the time. And those are the goals that I'm setting every quarter and that I'm revisiting every single day to make sure that I'm making progress towards those goals. So all the advice and homework was great, obviously, but I am like 100% on fire, on board with set some goals and create a master plan on how you're going to get there, and watch how much progress you'll make and how quickly it'll happen when you take action towards those goals.
The last thing I'll throw in there, Jordan, is don't be afraid to pivot, because I don't know, maybe he's going to make a fool out of me, but I'm willing to bet that thing he just showed us is not exactly where he is today. I'm willing to bet there's things come off that list. There's things come on that he didn't think about. So create this master plan, create these goals, break them down for yourself. If you're married, make sure you get buy-in from your spouse. They don't have to be you. They don't have to do what you do, but they do have to be willing to go along with the journey to some extent. So sometimes you have to invest in that relationship and create a dynamic between you and your spouse or your kids or whatever, if you're grandkids or whatever, where they're a part of the journey. And that doesn't mean they have to do a clean laundromat with you, but the point is your support system is important. So make sure that it's on solid footing. But yeah, don't be afraid to pivot, because I'm willing to bet that if you create a 5-year master plan and you create a bunch of micro goals to get there, by the time you get there, it's going to look very different. And that's okay. So look at that master plan as like a living, breathing document versus like some rigid thing that you have to do where you're boxing yourself in. I think when people talk about like personal budgets and things like that, they see them as these like really restrictive things. And that's really the opposite of what we should be looking at them. We should be looking at them as like a living, breathing document. I always say, you know what? My opinions I said on this webinar tonight they were recorded. So they're going to be out there somewhere in the world forever. But let me tell you something. You come up to me 6 months from now and I tell you an opinion of something that's the antithesis of what I said tonight. Well, guess what happened in that 6 months? I have new information. And I reserve the right to change my opinion at any point, because I'm always trying to grow. And you should be doing the same. So that's the last thing that I would throw in there, just so that everybody understands kind of what that journey looks like for you.
Yeah. And just to top that off, I'd say expect it to change.
No doubt.
Because if it doesn't, you're probably doing something wrong, because you should be growing, you should be evolving, you should be learning. And as you do that, just like you mentioned, all those goals, I've mostly added to mine. There's a few things that I've subtracted, but it just keeps getting added to. So that's just
squirrel over here and a squirrel over here and a squirrel over here. All over the
place, but
shiny object up here.
Thank you so much for joining this webinar.
It was fun.
It has been awesome, Dave. Thank you for joining us and sharing so much super awesome stuff. Really, really appreciate you. Appreciate all of you guys who have joined us. Hopefully you got something super valuable out of it. Look forward to your book, Dave. Look forward to the Laundromat Millionaire Conference. Going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully some of you guys will be able to join us. And awesome. So the rest of you guys know, we got webinars going on every single week. laundromatresource.com/events to check them out. A lot of cool ones on the docket right now. So thank you guys. Ria says thank you. It just went to me, but that's for you too, I'm sure. So thank you guys. And we'll see you at whatever the next thing is. There's webinars, there's podcasts, my podcast, Dave's Laundromat Millionaire podcast. You know, we got forums over at Laundromat Millionaire. We got blog posts going on. We got YouTube channels going on. There's all kinds of stuff. Yeah, Dave, where can they find more information about the conference when it's ready to go?
If you're following anything I'm associated with, you're going to know all about it. So my YouTube channel is Laundromat Millionaire. Just type in Laundromat Millionaire. My website's laundromatmillionaire.com. That's where we'll be actually selling the tickets to it and things like that. And the details will be coming out in the next few weeks. So, I mean, it's not going to be long. We're actively working on many things. And actually, a lot of decisions have already been made. I just don't want to share them yet because we haven't been able to sign contracts and things like that. But yeah, if you just go to my website, laundromatmillionaire.com, that's going to be the best place. But really anywhere that I am, I mean, Facebook group and whatever, anywhere I am, I'm going to be telling everybody whether they want to hear about it or not, because I just want it to be amazing. I just want a bunch of people to get together that want to grow and want to challenge each other and network and build relationships. And first come, first serve. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate, like, hey, you guys are in like on the ground level. Like Dave said, he's only mentioned this one other time, and that was 2 days ago. And
I haven't posted this publicly on social media, emails. I haven't told, very few people know about this yet. And it's not because it's a super secret. It's just because we haven't made decisions on specifics. And when I release stuff, I like to do more, but Jordan gave me the chance and I appreciate it. Just kind of give you sort of a save the date type of thing. The dates in Miami, Florida, those are pretty much locked in at this point. We just got to hammer out all the details, but man, is it going to be awesome. I'm telling you, it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be great.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Anytime. Always have a good time with you. And like I said, could talk for days with you. Definitely. So appreciate it. Guys, have a great evening or night if you're over there on the East Coast over there. And we'll see you whatever the next thing is. Thanks, Dave.
All right. You got it. Take care, everyone. Thanks.